Kurt Busch delivers an emotional retirement speech. New safety concerns arise after Ryan Preece's crash, and both Stewart-Haas Racing and 2311 attempt to shut down recent rumors. How's it going, y'all? My name is Eric. Welcome to Out of the Groove. We've got a very full show in store today, but first, this episode is sponsored by Aluma. Aluma Trailers lets you take the fun anywhere. Check it out. Heading to a car show? Aluma Trailers are the ideal choice for hauling your classic car or truck. Aluma has trailers that are made for low-profile vehicles, making it easy to load and unload your car or truck. Easy on, easy off. Aluma has new wide-body trailers available as well. Plus, there are great options available like rock guards, storage box, air dam, and hydraulic surge brakes. Maybe you're looking to get the ATV or motorcycle out, no problem. Aluma offers a huge selection of high-quality, dependable recreational and utility trailers that can help you get your adventure started. Take fun anywhere. Find a dealer today and begin your Aluma adventure. Thank you to Aluma for sponsoring the show. You can click the top link down in the description below to learn even more. This past weekend, Kurt Busch officially announced his retirement. Kurt Busch has not driven a race car since last summer when a qualifying crash at Pocono resulted in a head injury, forced him to miss the remainder of last season. He missed out on the 2022 NASCAR Cup Series playoffs. He said this past weekend in a short video he posted, quote, "Sometimes father time can catch up to your dreams. My incredible team of doctors and I have come to the conclusion that at this point in my recovery, there are just too many obstacles for me to overcome and get back to 100%. Kurt Busch had previously left the door open to a possible NASCAR return, even if just part-time, once he could get clearance from doctors. But this past weekend, obviously, he came to the conclusion that he would no longer pursue racing at the top level of NASCAR. I don't need to tell you that Kurt Busch is a future Hall of Famer. Won a Cup Series championship in 2004. He won the 2017 Daytona 500. 34 Cup Series wins. He won a race in 19 different seasons. It would have been 21 straight years with a win, except he came up just short that year. He was at Phoenix Racing driving the 51. He also didn't win in the 78 at Furniture Row, but that was pre-Cole Pearn, pre-Martin Truex Jr., pre-Toyota. That team was still getting off the ground. And in both cases, he was very close. So close to 21 straight years with the win. Kurt Busch is a future Hall of Famer. Beyond NASCAR, I mean, he was the Indy 500 Rookie of the Year in 2014. Remember that? He ran the double, finished 6th at the Brickyard. Goodness gracious. I wanted to react to a few clips and quotes from his press conference that he held this past weekend at Daytona. I was there, and the scene was honestly a bit surreal. So many members of Toyota, 2311 Racing, Bubba Wallace, Tyler Reddick, Mike Helton, Steve O'Donnell, Ben Kennedy were among those in the room for Kurt's press conference. Kyle Busch, of course, Kurt's younger brother, was present as well. There were a few quotes in particular that I wanted to pluck out, share with you, react to. First and foremost, while one chapter of Kurt's career and life may be ending, a new chapter is beginning. He made it abundantly clear that he will still be at the racetrack. He'll still be around the sport. He'll still be working with 2311.
I made up my official title this year. I was called CFD, Captain of the Fun Department. So that's been a good role. And then as of late, though, I've revised it. I want to become slightly more professional within the group. So I've named myself CVO, Chief Vision Officer. Of course, whatever it means is whatever it means. But I enjoy working with all the departments and being that extra set of eyes and helping our team advance so that we can win more races, be more competitive, and have shots at winning championships, because that's the person who I am and I want to give back to our team.
I also thought this quote was interesting, Kurt explaining the kind of driver he always wanted to be.
I wanted to be a driver that fans could always count on for a good solid run each day. You know, those New Englanders embraced me after Ricky Craven and my finish at Darlington. You know, the Midwesterners and the big push in Chicago and Kansas and Texas. I always just wanted to give them, you know, somebody to root for that they could always count on, because I'm pretty much just like them. I'm a blue collar worker that got an opportunity to do something really cool.
Kurt Busch's career was a roller coaster, on track, off track. He went from being one of the biggest heels in the sport to, honestly, I think one of the great redemption stories, a fan favorite the past few seasons. What I'll always think of when I think of Kurt Busch's driving career is how he made every single team he joined better, almost instantly. We can say that about a lot of drivers in specific situations, but Kurt Busch bounced from team to team to team, and everywhere he went, performance improved, beginning at Roush. Kurt Busch's rookie season was in 2002, and in 2003-2004, Roush won back-to-back championships, their first 2 Cup Series championships ever. Kurt, of course, was directly responsible for one of them, the first championship in the Chase playoff era. In 2012, Kurt Busch ends up at Phoenix Racing, driving that 51 car for James Finch. That car had no business being as competitive as it was, but I still remember that Talladega night scheme at Talladega, Kurt leading laps, and then Sonoma was very much in contention for the win, wound up finishing 3rd. Kurt went to Furniture Row Racing the very next season, and while he didn't win a race, that 2013 was the best all-around season the 78 team had up to that point. By far, it wasn't even close. And of course, 2 years later, when Truex and Cole Pearn teamed up, that team was in the championship 4. That year with Kurt Busch was a huge step, a very important stretch for what would one day become a championship caliber, more or less independent organization. We look at how far Stewart-Haas Racing has fallen. Just a few years ago when Kurt Busch was there, SHR had all 4 of their cars in the round of 8. Kurt had 5 poles that season. And then Chip Ganassi Racing. That number 1 car hadn't won a race in nearly 5 years. I think you had to go back to maybe Jamie McMurray's All-Star win in 2014. Kurt gets behind the wheel in 2019, wins, makes the playoffs. 2020 wins, makes the playoffs. 2021 wins. Every team that Kurt Busch joined immediately got better. That honestly makes me excited for 23XI's future. I think they're genius keeping Kurt Busch around. If he wants to call himself the chief fun officer, the whoop-de-doodle dandy, I don't care what he wants to call himself. He clearly brings value to any race team he touches. I think that's how I'll always define Kurt's driving career. Now, this whole topic is somewhat bittersweet because if not for that injury sustained at Pocono, Kurt Busch would probably still be driving today. He may be in his final season the same way Kevin Harvick is. I thought it was interesting this weekend. He talked about Father Time. He didn't just talk about the head injury. He talked about other physical ailments that he'd been dealing with the past year plus.
My body is just having a battle with Father Time. I've had arthritis ever since I can remember. My gout is flared up so much that I can barely walk on some days. Just pushing to get through physical therapy and to continue the workouts. I remember last summer, I was trying to not show that emotion, and I barely could even walk to the car at Dover because I had to have some shots pre-race just so that I could move my knee and move my feet. Those are those moments where things were starting to add up before things happened at Pocono.
Kurt Busch has handled this whole ordeal with tremendous grace the past year. He would have had every right, in my opinion, to be a little bitter, to air some frustrations. NASCAR unveiled a car that was not as safe as it should have been. Several drivers were sidelined with concussions or concussion-like symptoms. If Kurt Busch had come out and expressed resentment, I think everyone would have said, hey, he has that right. But he hasn't done that. Instead, he's even praised NASCAR this past weekend for the changes they've made since his crash and other crashes like it. So we'll kind of transition a bit here away from Kurt Busch into a more broad, brief safety conversation, because I think eyebrows were raised at Daytona when Ryan Preece went flipping wildly. I saw a video actually from NBR on YouTube. I'll put a link to his video down in the description below. He says in the video he has 2 different mechanical engineering degrees and was breaking down detailed elements from the flip. Talked about how the flat underbody, when it's not pointed forward, creating downforce, it often has the opposite effect. He also pointed out what many have pointed out, the roof hatch snapped off, leaving part of the cockpit exposed. Also the window net, which serves a key purpose, helps keep the driver contained, also keeps debris out became at least partially detached as well. NASCAR did take Ryan Preece's car back to the R&D center this week. They'll be studying it. I wouldn't be surprised if somewhere down the line we hear of new tweaks or edits getting announced, because certainly those two failures should not happen. I understand NASCAR, they do their best, but it's very hard to protect against any and every crash. Like, that Ryan Preece flip was one of the most violent we've ever seen. Like, there's a whole generation, maybe 2 generations of NASCAR fans who've never seen anything quite like that. Got to go back to some of the blowovers from like the early 90s. I've seen Hollywood crashes look more realistic than what happened Saturday night. So NASCAR will do their best. They can't protect against everything. There are always going to be sort of outlier crashes, but that doesn't mean they should ever stop trying. And basic things like the roof hatch shouldn't fail that quickly, that easily. I think Denny Hamlin mentioned it on Actions Detrimental this week. I was listening that during an early next-gen test, he just accidentally detached, like loosened the roof hatch, just like bumping it. It blew off apparently during a test, and all of a sudden he had a sunroom in his car. That's what he was explaining on his podcast. Like, that that sounds like something that needs some changes sooner rather than later. But I guess I want to wrap up this segment by taking one of your comments from Out of the Crowd from my most recent video. This comment came from Waltrip Flair, and they said, "We always give NASCAR hell on these comment boards, so let's take a moment to give credit where credit is due. Without NASCAR's ongoing commitment to safety since Dale Sr.'s passing, we could have lost both Ryans last night." NASCAR and their partners absolutely deserve a ton of credit for the safety improvements over the past 20 years. And I don't think Waltrip Flair is saying this, but I do think it's fair in many cases when we give them grief, especially early days of the next gen. Car had some clear design flaws. I think we were right to criticize them for that. They've done their best to fix many of those flaws since then. They deserve credit for that. But Walter Flair is right, especially Blaney's crash head on into the outside wall. I don't like to get too morbid or hypothetical, but that could have been catastrophic 20, 25 years ago. And even Preece, that center section of that car looked pretty sturdy. Outside of the roof hatch and the window net detaching, it held its shape, it held form pretty well, all things considered. Again, that was one of the most violent flips in NASCAR history. But thank you for the comment, Waltrip Flair. Again, as always, leave a comment on these videos and it may get answered, may be featured in the next Out of the Crowd segment. Now let's pivot. Let's change subjects entirely. NASCAR free agency is still very much in full swing. Let's start with Kaulig Racing. Chris Rice, team president, was on SiriusXM NASCAR radio just a few days ago and said this, quote, "The number 31 car is pretty much done. It's in good shape, and like I said from the get-go, I think everybody's going to be pretty surprised with what we're doing with that. I'm excited, Matt Kaulig is excited, everybody that is involved is excited about it. That's been a relief. I've been able to sleep a little bit." Justin Haley a few weeks ago announced he would be moving over to Rick Ware Racing next year. Then last week, Austin Hill, who Kaulig had been linked to, announced he was staying with Richard Childress. He'd signed a multi-year Xfinity Series extension with RCR. Chris Rice, remember, tweeted, "Wait, what?" Question mark. Haley gone, Austin Hill off the board. I was wondering whether Kaulig would be kind of scrambling a bit behind the scenes, but at least for one of their cars, again, the 16 technically doesn't have a driver sign for next year either. At least one of their cars appears to be set. I'm not going to waste too much time trying to guess who they're going to sign. Chris Rice said that probably in the next couple weeks they'll make an official announcement. You look internally first. Chandler Smith, Daniel Hemrick both drive Xfinity cars for Kaulig, but Chris Rice says that people will be a bit surprised by this announcement. I don't think Chandler Smith or Daniel Hemrick would be very surprising, personally. I do wonder if they will go with multiple drivers driving the 31. Just last year, that's what they did with the 16. The 16 was a chartered entry in contention for the Owners' Playoffs, the Owners' Championship, but they had guys from A.J. Allmendinger to Noah Gragson to Daniel Hemrick driving that thing here and there periodically. Could they do the same with the 31? It makes me wonder. Trackhouse, it sounds like, is signing Shane Van Gisbergen to a wide-ranging development deal. Trackhouse is a Chevy team. Kaulig, while not necessarily a key Chevy partner, is also a Chevy team. Could they borrow SVG for a couple of races, maybe a couple of road courses, and maybe he wins one and gets that 31 into the owners' playoffs. Could that be part of their strategy? That might fit the surprising description. Sounds like we'll find out in the next couple of weeks, according to what Chris Rice said again on Sirius XM NASCAR radio. But Kaulig now may have one of their seats filled. We'll have to wait and find out who it'll be filled by. One of my favorite podcasts to listen to each week is The Teardown, which is hosted by The Athletic's Jeff Gluck and Jordan Bianchi. And this week, Jordan Bianchi once again dropping some very interesting hints and nuggets. I was listening to their latest episode yesterday, and towards the end, Jordan Bianchi said that someone from Stewart-Haas Racing told him that they are committed to fielding 4 cars, keeping their 4 charters next season. There had been reports in the past week from catchfence.com that Stewart-Haas Racing was open to selling up to 2 of their 4 charters. Bianchi says that SHR told him those rumors are not true. So there you go. There's an update there. I did overhear Ryan Preece tell some reporters this past weekend that there's a very good chance I'll be back in the 41 car. So, I mean, that's not a confirmation in my opinion, but still interesting. I think Stewart-Haas Racing is very much in flux, if not for next year, potentially the year after. Because remember, Lee Spencer, catchfence.com, also reported that Stewart-Haas Racing's deal with Ford doesn't expire until after next season. So, like, if they wanted to sell charters this year, I'm not even sure they contractually really could. I think we have to look at 2025. Like this time next year, we'll be talking about Stewart-Haas potentially selling charters, especially if Ford wants to go in a different direction. We've seen RFK emerge this summer. McDowell and Front Row have a win. 2 of the 3 Team Penske Fords made the playoffs. Stewart-Haas Racing is the outlier. They are the underperforming Ford team and have been for almost 3 years now. This time next year, things could get interesting. If Stewart-Haas does not improve at all, Ford may be looking to go in a different direction. And I think that's where the 2311 to Ford rumors really start to pick up. Not so much about 2024, but about 2025. That's when all hell could break loose. Speaking of 2311 Racing, Jordan Bianchi, again from The Athletic, also tweeted this on Saturday. I asked 2311 Racing President Steve Lauletto whether 2311 will remain aligned with Toyota in 2024. His response, quote, "Yeah, and no changes for us as far as I know next year." That was another report recently that folks from Denny Hamlin and 2311's camp had met with Ford in the past few weeks. 2311 Racing President saying there that no change is likely for next season. He does say, as far as I know. He is the president of the team. I would think he knows just about everything that goes on inside their walls. But again, I think next year, I don't expect much change. Now, I don't know. Would Toyota and 2311 sign like a 1-year deal? Would they sign a 1-year alliance with JGR? Like, I don't know. I feel like those are the kind of deals you want to work, multiple years at a time. But maybe they would. Maybe they'd sign a temporary 1-year agreement. And then at the end of 2024, when the charter agreement is up, the next TV deal is on the horizon. When Ford, their contract with SHR ends, they're looking for a new key partner. Maybe that's when business will truly pick up. But that is months, a full year down the line. I think that's going to do it for this episode. One more bit of news, not really related to Kurt Busch safety or silly season, but Carson Hocevar, I saw, will make a cup start this weekend at Darlington, driving for Legacy Motor Club. He's the next fill-in driver of the 42. Apparently, he was supposed to drive the Spire 77 Xfinity car on Saturday. Instead, he will focus on the cup race. Good seat time, good experience for Carson Hocevar. I know that car is not great, but any experience he gets behind the wheel of the next gen is probably good for his development, his future. Hocevar is still, I think, rumored to be in the running for a Cup Series ride, maybe with a team like Spire, but who knows? Any experience is good experience. And Hocevar ran top 10 at Darlington in Xfinity earlier this year without hardly any practice or seat time beforehand. So this could be a good track for him, could be a good chance to feel some things out. So looking forward to seeing what Carson Hocevar can do. That is going to do it for this episode. We covered a lot of ground. Whew. I have a feeling this week is going to be very busy. I'm going to give you guys my round by round playoff predictions, my championship pick, and there will more than likely be other news dropping. If you kept up with trucks yesterday, championship contender Ty Majeski may be in deep trouble. We'll wait to talk about that when the news potentially breaks. That's gonna do it for this episode. Thanks for watching, y'all. Hit the like button if you enjoyed this video. Hit that subscribe button if you want to stay tuned for the next one. And thank you to my Patreon supporters for your very generous support each and every month. I greatly appreciate it. I will see you again tomorrow. Oh, did I mention there's a new episode of Power Hour, my podcast with Brennan Poole? Yeah, that's dropping this week as well. So no shortage of content to get you ready for the NASCAR Cup Series playoffs. Thanks for watching, y'all. I will see you again very soon.